This week's video journal is a tour of Blacklick Township in 1987. This was made with my sons Michael and Kevin, who were about 12 and 13 at that time, respectively. And we begin at what to me has always been the Pinehurst restaurant at the Triangle in Balseno, but at this time it was known as the Countryside Kitchen. And we're trying to get a picture of the sign there, which is not quite readable. And going back on from the restaurant parking lot onto 422, we pass the former Sunoco station, the long-time Sunoco station, which was mobile at that time, and which now, of course, for some years has been vacant or not in business. And then the soft ice cream store that was Shutack's originally, now known as the Krispy Kreme, and at that time in 1987 it had the Cow, for which it has its nickname, the Cow, by a lot of people in that area these days. I think the Cow is also gone today in 2008. And now driving on into Balseno. And now we're coming up to the Methodist Church, which was the original Methodist Church in Balseno, of which now there are two, because the other church in town, the former Evangelical United Brethren Church, is also a Methodist church now, because the two denominations merged in the late 1960s. We're driving down what was Main Street in those days, which now I think is called the Benjamin Franklin Highway. And that was Mr. Niniger's house when I was a kid. He was the school superintendent for Blacklick Township. And now we're at the lower church, the former EUB church, now Faith United Methodist Church. And this is where my parents now are buried, and also my brother Gary, who died in 1957. And we just stopped in the parking lot for a short look around. We didn't really get out and walk around. The church looks good to me after all these years. That was the church that I attended from the time I was 5 until I was about 18, I believe. And in the tape, I'm pointing out to my sons where the former parsonage for this church used to be, right next to the church. Now going back up what we used to call Main Street towards South Street. At the corner here is what we always called Cook's Store, even though from the time I moved to Balseno just before I turned 5, or I guess it was right after I turned 5, there was never a store there. It was just the place that the Cooks lived in. And now we're driving out Balseno's South Street, past houses that I used to be able to name the family owners of, but have long since passed away from my knowledge. We lived almost a mile back South Street when I was growing up. And here I'm pointing out to the houses that are new from my days of living here and those that I used to know the residents of. This is the first of 3 segments I think that I'll have on Blacklick Township, each of them about 10 to 11 minutes. I believe it'll also include a tour of Vintondale in the second or third segment. The woods on both sides of this road, especially on the right, were ones that I often played in when I was a kid. My own family woods abutted this family's property, so we just go into the woods and go as far as we could, making trails and getting to know all the nooks and crannies in the woods. Now we're coming into my neighborhood, Thompson's Corner, the corner of South Street and Red Mill Road. And there's the Thompson house, which I believe still has one of the Thompsons living in it. But they were living there when we moved into our house. And that was the Learns house. And this on the left is the Kennedy house that I grew up in. And our farm, except for the lot that the house is on, was on the other side of the road, on the right here as we go down Red Mill Road. And I'm not sure if the boys will pan over there or not. They probably will eventually. There it is. And that barn is new, not the one that we had. And there was a little dam down there, a little reservoir that my dad had worked on a number of summers. And they're trying to catch the water in the picture, but I don't think it shows. And these are new houses since I lived there. Our next neighbor in this direction was the Smiths, and this white house was the Smiths' house at that time. So there are 2 new houses, relatively new houses, on the way there. And then the next house was the Huffmans, but this one is new since those days. I have no idea who built it or lives in it. And this is the old Huffman house. The next house after that still is Antonio Zanin's home. He built in some of his parents' property, or bought some property from them. I have no idea what the circumstances were, of course. None of my business. On the left here is what we called Stoy's Lane, a lane that passed the Stoy farm, which eventually came out into Vintondale at the iron furnace. And on the home page, there's a hike from that furnace up this hill to past the Stoy's farm to Red Mill Road. We just passed the Zanin's parents' house, and now we're coming up to the Grant's house. Big white house that sits back off the road more than most of the others. Not getting a very good picture of it. I think we just saw a flash of it. And this is a newer house. When we moved on to the Red Mill Road, it was, of course, a dirt road. And now it's paved all the way to the county line, or the township line, at the end of Cambria County, down in Red Mill itself. I was telling the boys as we went down this hill how we used to sled ride here and also on the hill between our house and the Smith's house. And now we're coming to the end of today's segment as we approach the old Clark farm. There were several Clark farms down at the bottom of this hill, and the first white one here is the younger family of the two when we were first living here in the late 1940s, around 1947-48.